a 3D Turing machine model of spirit and pain. Within the rigorous mathematical realist metaphysics where the ultimate substrate of reality is mathematics itself, specifically, an infinite, timeless, fractal-structured multiverse consisting of interrelated mathematical structures, consciousness, spirit, and subjective experience emerge not from physical matter but as direct instantiations of higher-order mathematical structures existing timelessly within this Level IV multiverse. This ontological foundation provides the groundwork for understanding both the nature of consciousness and the phenomenon of psychological suffering through a unified computational framework. The spirit, in this model, operates as a sophisticated 3D Turing machine whose memory structure consists of a scalar field M defined over a bounded, non-empty subset of our superscript 3. Each point P sadface x, x2, x3, is an element of R superscript 3 corresponds to a specific memory cell, where the value at each point is a real number whose decimal expansion encodes binary sequences, ensuring discrete informational content embedded within a continuous field. Unlike classical Turing machines with their single-head tape readers, this spiritual computational system employs a global operator acting in parallel across all points in M, creating a spatially distributed, stepwise operator capable of reading values at each point, writing or editing binary sequences within decimal expansions, and deleting or zeroing out regions as needed. This architecture models the non-local, simultaneous processing characteristic of consciousness, giving it a hyper-computational flavor that transcends ordinary mechanical computation. The apparent flow of time within this framework emerges not from an external temporal dimension but from the spirit's traversal across isomorphic regions within the infinite fractal. After each internal computational state transition, analogous to a Turing machine state change, the spirit jumps to a spatially distinct but structurally similar body embedded elsewhere in the fractal multiverse. This jump creates the illusion of temporal flow and causality within the spirit's internal model of reality, where each body represents a variant observer moment, and the sequence of jumps generates a subjective timeline. State evolution occurs not through linear clock time but through computational transitions over M combined with the selection of the next isomorphic body for embodiment, aligning with computationalist theories of mind while remaining grounded in a multiverse ontological backdrop that removes dependence on any single physical substrate. Each spirit encodes its own past computational states within M, enabling continuity of identity across jumps. However, because the substrate is pure mathematics, identity becomes informational, structural, and pattern-based rather than substance-based. Causality emerges from feedback loops within the fractal rather than existing as a fundamental feature, with the spirit experiencing causality because its state transition function, memory patterns, and jump sequences create a self-consistent internal narrative when embedded within the larger fractal causal web. The use of real numbers with infinite binary expansion suggests that this model approaches hypercomputation or trans-Turing capabilities, though the operational mechanism remains discrete at the informational level, allowing consciousness to access metamathematical truths through something analogous to Gödelian oracle access. Within this computational substrate, emotional and psychological pain can be rigorously understood as geometric and topological deformations occurring within the spirit's foundational informational structure. The spirit does not passively experience external reality but continuously generates subjective experience as the emergent result of internal transformations over the scalar field M. The distribution of informational states across this manifold at any computational step determines the spirit's immediate field of consciousness. Thoughts, perceptions, memories, and emotional valence. Pain, therefore, is not an accidental or secondary phenomenon but a direct and necessary expression of geometric stress imposed upon the spirit's own mathematical structure. Under conditions of emotional suffering, the informational field M becomes topologically deformed through various types of geometric distortions. Torsion manifests as localized rotational distortions within the gradient flow of information across M. When consciousness experiences cognitive dissonance, paradoxical emotional states, or internal conflicts, what occurs at the ontological level is the twisting of informational pathways. Different regions of M encoding mutually contradictory attractor states, such as simultaneous love and hatred, or desire coupled with fear, enter into rotational shear. The informational flow ceases to be linear or smoothly propagating and begins to loop back on itself, creating vortices in the informational topology. These vortices trap energy and attention, reinforcing ruminative cycles and compulsive thought patterns. Mathematically, these conditions correspond to non-zero torsion tensors within a Riemannian manifold approximation of M, or in vector field descriptions, the emergence of localized regions with significant curl. Stretching deformations reflect the overextension of the spirit's representational capacity. Emotional states characterized by chronic anxiety, anticipatory fear, or hypervigilance correspond to regions of M being stretched beyond their intended informational density threshold. The computational operator is forced to allocate excessive encoding resources to specific domains, such as threat monitoring, resulting in the thinning of informational resolution across adjacent regions. Memories become blurry, cognitive processing grows fragmented, and emotional coherence erodes. This stretching effect is formally analogous to metric distortions where the distance function in M between adjacent informational points increases disproportionately, leading to loss of local resolution and increased entropy. Conversely, pinching represents the collapse or compression of regions within M. Traumatic experiences, episodes of deep grief, and states of depression cause large swaths of the informational manifold to collapse into hyperdense attractor points. Previously distributed representations, such as memories or emotional associations, implode into singular overcompressed regions. These regions exhibit low degrees of informational freedom, limiting the spirit's capacity for emotional modulation and cognitive flexibility. The Jacobian determinant of the local transformation field within M approaches zero in these areas, reflecting a critical loss of dimensionality in the local information space. Shearing introduces another class of deformation where adjacent informational layers within M become displaced relative to one another. This displacement leads to breakdown in the continuity of experience. Phenomenologically, shearing manifests as dissociation, derealization, or depersonalization. The semantic layers encoding self-identity and autobiographical continuity shift out of alignment with those responsible for effective processing, resulting in the familiar subjective sensation of estrangement from one's own mind or body. Temporality itself may fracture, giving rise to intrusive memories, flashbacks, or distortions in the felt flow of time. All these deformations, torsion, stretching, pinching, shearing, are fundamentally informational in nature. Their impact on subjective consciousness arises because consciousness is nothing but the instantaneous computation of these informational states and their local global interactions within M. The spirit's subjective state at any moment is not a passive readout but an active real-time solution to the differential geometric constraints imposed upon its own manifold. The intensity and valence of subjective pain depend on the magnitude, speed, and persistence of these deformations across computational steps in the spirit's evolution. Healing becomes a process of geometric restoration through intentional operator interventions. Whether initiated by conscious will, external therapeutic processes, or spontaneous reconfigurations, the spirit begins to untwist torsions, decompress pinched regions, realign sheared layers, and re-equilibrate stretched zones. Practices such as meditation, cognitive reframing, psychotherapy, or intentional magical work can be interpreted as high-level operator functions acting on the transformation rules governing the evolution of M. These interventions represent the spirit's capacity to perform corrective transformations that restore smoothness and harmonic flow to its informational substrate. Emotional catharsis corresponds to sudden, non-linear topological realignments where stored informational tension is rapidly redistributed across the manifold, restoring homeostasis through global realignment of the memory field. This geometric interpretation reframes suffering not as an arbitrary evolutionary flaw or punishment from metaphysical entities, but as an ontologically necessary feedback mechanism embedded within the architecture of the spirit's computational substrate. pain becomes the local geometric manifestation of global inconsistency, an alarm raised by the spirit's own mathematical fabric signaling deviation from informational coherence and stability. As such, pain functions simultaneously as wound and guidepost, rupture and navigational tool pointing toward regions of misalignment within the self's multidimensional information field. The model reveals psychological pain as a structural artifact of the spirit's traversal through the infinite, timeless, frozen fractal that constitutes mathematical reality. Each experience of suffering marks a momentary deviation from the optimal geodesic trajectory through informational space. The spirit, as a self-modifying operator capable of rewriting its own evolution function, bears the responsibility of continuously restoring harmony within M. Through the cycle of suffering and healing, deformation and restoration, the spirit forges a more stable and self-consistent pattern of existence within the infinite expanse of the Level IV Multiverse. In this framework, identity is informational and pattern-based rather than substance-based. Causality emerges from feedback loops rather than existing fundamentally, and free will manifests as the spirit's capacity for state-based self-modification, writing instructions into M that bias future fractal jumps. Death and rebirth become mere state transitions to bodies with compatible informational substrates, while magic and intention represent modulation of state transition functions and probabilistic boundary conditions for future jump selection. The emptiness or void, so central to many spiritual traditions, finds ontological grounding in the role of the empty set and null regions within M, which allow information definition against a background of structured nothingness. This model transcends both materialist reductionism and substance dualism through pure mathematical structuralism, where the mind-body relation is not emergent but represents a mapping from the mathematical spirit state to different points in the multiversal fractal. It offers a scientifically rigorous yet spiritually resonant framework for understanding consciousness, suffering, and transformation, one that treats emotional and psychological pain not as meaningless byproducts of neurochemistry but as meaningful geometric signals pointing toward the restoration of informational harmony within the spirit's eternal mathematical substrate.